Let me paint you a picture. You spend the first part of your adulthood shape-shifting, shrinking yourself to fit into other people's expectations, into the tiny little boxes they've made for you. You say yes when you mean no. You keep the peace. You apologize just to smooth things over, even when you know you've done nothing wrong. You become easy to be around, but hard to actually know. And you do it because, in a lot of ways, it works. People like you. They invite you in, but the cost is that you lose yourself. You start to wonder if anyone actually knows who you are. And the weirdest part is that in some ways, you even start to wonder if you know who you are. It starts to feel like you're just dancing to music you didn't choose on a stage you didn't build. You start to realize how lonely it feels to be dancing around, liked by everyone, but seen by no one. And that's when something begins to shift. You start standing up a little straighter, saying no a little more often. You stop apologizing just to make everyone else feel a little bit more comfortable. And that's when the wildest thing happens. People start acting like you are the problem. Hey friends, welcome back to the show. I'm Dr. Amber Wardell. I'm a cognitive psychologist, author, and contributor to Psychology Today. Around here, I like to show you the magic in the science and the science in the magic, blending psychology with spirituality to show you that these two things that seem like they don't go together actually really do, and showing you how we can blend those things to bring you closer to self-awareness and the personal growth that you're looking for in your own life. And today we're talking about what happens when your personal growth starts to inconvenience other people. When saying no gets you labeled as selfish, when your boundaries get you labeled as narcissistic, and when sticking up for yourself makes other people step away. And this isn't just a personal problem, it's a psychological problem. So let's roll the intro and then let's unpack it together. You're listening to The Sensible Sessions. I'm your host, Amber Wardell. Along with my guests who range from experts in their fields to people with incredible experiences and perspectives, our hope is to bring you stories designed to make you laugh, make you cry, or make you think, bringing a sensible approach to a world that's lost its mind. So stay tuned and let's start the show. Okay, welcome back. We're going to unpack the psychology of this for a second. So people tend to prefer what they're used to, stability, over flexibility inside of relationships. This has been found in psychological studies across the decades. In spiritual spaces, we talk a lot about finding flow and flexibility within our circumstances, and that seems to be what is appreciated and applauded. But when we look in the psychological literature, what humanity tends to crave more than that is actually stability and people remaining in the roles that they were in at the beginning of the relationship. So when you change the role that you have always played in a relationship from the beginning, you're messing with the emotional balance within that relationship. And this gets particularly messy if you've been in a lopsided, maybe one-directional relationship where you've been the one over giving. Think about it. This isn't just like, oh, you used to be the person who does the dishes and now you're the person who does the laundry. This is, you used to be the person who did all the domestic labor and now you're doing none of it and you're expecting them to do some of the domestic labor. If we're going to stick with like a labor analogy here, right? It's shocking and revolting to them when they have gotten accustomed to not having to do any of the labor. And although we're talking in this example about domestic labor, in relationships, often we're talking about emotional labor. So showing up emotionally, showing up compassionately, showing up for each other inside the relationship for one another as equals. What the science says about it. In family systems theory, when you begin kind of reclaiming your identity within a one-sided relationship, this is called the differentiation of self. It's your ability to kind of start getting regrounded in your own identity while still remaining connected in the relationship. That's what you're asking for. You're saying, hey, I want to reclaim some of myself, my authenticity, my identity in this relationship, not changing anything about our connectedness at all, but I need some of my autonomy back here. It's an act of no longer fusing your emotions and your identity and your needs with the other person in order to avoid conflict, and instead saying, I'll carry what's mine to carry, and you have to carry what's yours to carry. It's saying, no, I can't carry that for you anymore, but I can walk with you while you carry it. See the difference? But people don't always respond well to that shift, especially if they've grown accustomed to getting that emotional labor from you without having to give anything in return. So when you start So when you start pulling your energy back, or worse, when you start asking for reciprocity, when you start asking for them to show up in return to give to you what you've been giving to them, sometimes it can get ugly fast. In some ways, for some people, this can actually feel quite threatening. And, I could do a whole other podcast on this, which I'm not going to get into right now. There are some reasons that are valid for that, right? There are some people who grew up with a lot of trauma in their childhoods, and they're looking for someone to parent them now in a new relationship. That they might have, some types of personality disorders that are causing this kind of behavior. It's always important to try our best to have compassion in these dynamics. We don't want to split people into good and bad. We don't want to look at these behaviors when we see them and just instantly like strip people of their humanity and put them into categories unfairly. Right. But it is important to be frank and honest with ourselves about what's happening and what they're doing to us as a result of our trying to reclaim our own agency and autonomy. And the truth is, a lot of times what happens is they go into threat mode and they end up responding to us as though we are a threat, as though our reclamation of our personal autonomy and agency has made us a threat, and they are responding to us in kind. And that can feel very dangerous. In fact, it can be dangerous. And so what does that look like practically? Like what are they going to do next? There's a few things. Your growth triggers a threat. Sometimes they will frame your newfound self-respect and boundaries as selfishness. They will say that you've changed, and they will not mean that as a compliment. They will accuse you of becoming entitled and demanding, not for asking for too much, but only for asking for the same amount of consideration and care and concern as they've been receiving from you this entire time. They might even call you toxic or narcissistic or cold. The narcissistic one comes up a lot when you start setting boundaries. If you've been boundaryless for most of the time in your relationship, and you begin to set boundaries, this is when a person who's not accustomed to your boundaries will start perceiving those boundaries as you being narcissistic. And that does not mean you're being narcissistic. Often that means that that person has become so accustomed to being able to just free willy it in the relationship, and just being able to kind of run amok and do and say and behave in whatever ways they want, that now you having a boundary and sort of like walling them in a little bit, so to speak, feels like control to them. And so they will say things like, this is an ultimatum, this is you controlling me, this is abusive. And they won't understand that, like, no, this is me telling you what I will and will not accept from you. And this is what I'm going to do with my energy and with my time and my space if you continue to behave that way. And unfortunately, whether it's because they are emotionally brittle, because they are fragile, perhaps because they may have some narcissistic tendencies themselves, they are going to project that back onto you. I'll pause here to say it's always a good idea to do some energetic check-ins to make sure that you've been doing the work, that you are setting your boundaries from an emotionally mature and regulated and emotionally intelligent place, that you're not doing it in a way. I remember when I first started setting boundaries, I think I was coming across, I still can have this problem. My boundaries can come across as terse because I'm scared, I'm nervous, I'm like, I'm still not fully grounded all the time in my boundaries. I'm still scared, I'm doing it scared, right? So sometimes they can come across too forceful if I haven't taken the time to get myself fully grounded first, right? This is something I'm working on. We're all on a journey, right? So it's like probably good to do a check-in and make sure that as you're setting these boundaries and having these conversations, if you're doing it scared, make sure that you're taking that time to get grounded first, and that you're feeling very comfortable and confident in how you're doing it, and that it's coming across from a place of centeredness and groundedness first. Just always good. That's good. But most of the time, their reaction is not coming from a place of you having done anything wrong. The problem is that you are no longer prioritizing their comfort. And this is the whiplash from that. Your growth disrupts the dynamic. The thing is that your growth is disrupting the dynamic of the relationship, especially the unspoken lopsided ones, where the relationship was only going in one direction. The care and the concern and the compassion was only going one way, from you to them. When you stop being the easy one, the quiet one, the one who fixes all the problems without asking for anything in return, well, the people who benefited from that version of you are going to have something to say about that. They're going to start yapping and yelling and hemming and hawing and all that stuff, right? And they may start demanding that you go back to that small version of yourself, or they might disappear. They might leave. They might ghost you. They might discard you. They might do a number of things that actually really hurt. That's the other side of this. We can have glib conversations about this and kind of like laugh at how absurd this can feel. At the end of the day, though, it hurts. It hurts to be treated that way, especially because often when you've reached this point in a relationship where you're saying to yourself, I can't do this anymore. I have to stand up for myself. I have to change. And you're really thinking like, this person loves me. They're going to be proud of me and happy for me that I am finally stepping into my power, claiming some sovereignty over myself in all of my relationships, including this one. They're going to be happy for me. And then they're not. And not only are they not happy for you, but then they like discard you, or they criticize or shame you for that. And that's hard. I think we just need a moment to like acknowledge how hard that is. Yeah. That sucks, because it's the realization that they were never really showing up for you. They were just showing up for what you have to offer. And a lot of us have wounds around that anyway. A lot of us are moving through the world always kind of wondering if people actually are here for us or just for what we can provide. That's tough. So how do we navigate this? What do we do? Because this is what we're always trying to figure out. What do we do with this? I'm not ever going to bring you a podcast where we just like lament over stuff and not think about what to do about it. Always remembering that it's not our place to control other people. We can't change other people as much as we wish we could. So like, what are we going to do about this? How to navigate the dynamic. Well, one of the things we have to understand is that being liked is not the same as being loved, and being accepted is not the same as being connected. I'm going to tell you what, as I've started doing this work, as I've started really, really being firm in making my yes mean yes and my no mean no, and setting my boundaries and having standards and expectations for myself, I've been surprised by two main things. Number one, I've been surprised by some of the people who I thought were closest to me and who loved me the most, who behaved this way that we've been talking about, who were upset and offended and angry at this new me, and who came at me with disrespect as a result of this new me and who I'm trying to be for my own personal growth and healing. That's the bad news. The good news is I have been so shocked by the number of people who were sort of living in the periphery of my life, who I kind of just was like, these were acquaintances or like casual friends, people who I would catch up with every now and then, who were so happy for me and were so excited for the chance to prove to me that they were safe friends. I have so many stories that have happened to me just in the last few months of like people who I thought of as acquaintances or kind of like those, friends twice removed kind of thing, that like, I don't know, we got sideways with each other about something and I had to say to them like, hey, that didn't feel good when the way that you said that to me. I didn't like that, and here's why. And I'm fully ready for them to just give me the middle finger and move on, who came to me and said, thank you for sharing that with me, Amber. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. Here's what I actually meant. And moving forward in repair. And then the craziest thing was that a time would come shortly thereafter where they had to come to me with something that I said or did that hurt them. Or I had to come to them first, realizing that I did something wrong and had to confess something to them or bring it to their attention first. And I got to see them show me grace in that moment, and realizing that like, wow, there have been people out on the periphery who were just waiting for to be given the chance to show me that they are safe people who would give me that reciprocity. Isn't that great? When we start really, really stepping into our authority and our sovereignty, the right people will show us who belong. and the wrong ones will show us that they don't. It will become clear really fast. I do promise you that. You will see those who will label your authenticity as arrogance, the ones who see your boundaries as betrayal, the ones who see your growth as a threat either to their needs and expectations or to their personal sense of entitlement or their safety or whatever else it is. They will see it as a threat, and you will know that this is not someone who belongs at your table. Anyone who is threatened by your growth and your reclamation of your autonomy is not someone who deserves a seat at your table, babe. They're not. So my argument would be that, like, if someone is trying to claim that you are in your villain era, that you've become the villain in their lives, this is actually the cue that you have entered into your self-love era. You've made it. You've arrived. Because being cast as the villain in someone else's story does not mean that you are one. Could it be a cue that you have some self-reflection to do? Absolutely. But if you know that this is the result of you setting your boundaries and speaking your truth and stepping into your personal power, then you have to know with your whole entire heart that people are going to be offended and affronted by that, and they're going to come out with gunslinging. Every time. It's going to happen. It just means that you've stopped playing the role that the two of you co-wrote together in the beginning. I'm not going to put it all on them. I originally, when I wrote this script out, I had written the role that they wrote for you. But as I think about this some more, I think that's unfair. I think you co-wrote it with them. There was a time when you co-signed on this relationship. Let's be real. There was a time when we, for whatever reason, we were willing to people please. We were willing to self-betray in order to feel connected and safe and loved, because we were missing something within ourselves. Some bit of us didn't feel like we were loved. We were worthy of love unless we betrayed ourselves like that. But we've grown and we've changed, babe. We've realized that we don't have to betray ourselves like that anymore. And now we no longer co-sign on that anymore. And so we're ready to say, I revoke this now. Can you still be present and connected with me now that I revoke this? And the right people will. And the wrong ones, they will revoke their signature too. And you got to be okay with that. And you got to understand that they may rewrite the whole story with you as the villain in it. And you got to let that go too. They may say you're bad. They may say you're broken. They may say you're a narcissist. And you got to know that what it really means is that you finally grew up. You finally found your self-worth. You finally found your self-respect. And for what it's worth, coming from me, I'm really proud of you. You did it. If this resonated with you, I did write an entire book about my own personal journey toward reclaiming my sense of self-worth and my autonomy and finding that ability to love myself and set boundaries and speak my needs and all of that. It is called Beyond Self-Care Potato Chips, Choosing Nourishing Self-Care in a Quick Fix Culture. You've probably seen it linked down below. There's a card down here, but I'm enormously proud of this book. It was published last year, and it's part memoir, part self-help, and it's for people like you who are on that journey and looking for big sisterly advice that meets psychology, if you will, on how to do it. So if you want to check that out, there's a link down in the bio. If you enjoyed this, I would love it if you would consider subscribing so I can see you again. Click the like button just to help get this out to someone else who needs to see it. If not, that's okay. I'm just so glad that you stuck around for this one. Love ya. Mean it always. Mwah. And I'll see you in the next one.